All right. Well, I would like to welcome everyone to ArtSpan's Art and Neighborhoods Artist Reception, celebrating the works of Chad Abbley, who is a current journal building artist. On a lighter note, I'd like to introduce the Art and Neighborhoods program for those who aren't familiar. It was initiated in 2015 with the intention of facilitating spontaneous artful discoveries by locals and tourists alike. We partner with venues that are not a typical white wall gallery or museum, but spaces we tend to frequent as busy urbanites, including cafes, restaurants, activity sites, hotels, and community centers. With the goal of bolstering our artist community with exposure and potential art sales, this program also intends to bring an influx of business to the participating venues. As when you're aligned with ArtSpan, you are aligned with our community-driven mission to keep arts alive in San Francisco. Okay, so we are gathered here to celebrate the works of Chad Abbley, and which is on view at Cumaica Coffee until February 2nd, 2022. This neighborhood cafe is a cozy spot to enjoy fresh coffee, tea, and delicious snacks. Stop by to view the works in person and enjoy the unique energy of the Excelsior district. If viewing in person, use our QR codes beside each artwork and scan to purchase the work on the spot. To view and purchase any artwork presented tonight from the comfort of your home, visit our new online store. Okay, and let's all give a great big welcome to Chad, our featured artist here. Hi, Chad, welcome.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great, thank you, appreciate it. We are so happy to have you with us tonight. A reminder to our attendees, if you have any questions for Chad, pop them into the chat and we will relay them to him towards the end. Chad is primarily an abstract painter and explains his process as experimental driven, finding new pathways to create distinct shapes and explore new ideas. All right, Chad, so we're gonna dive right into the questions I have for you. Starting off with, how intentional is your color palette?
As far as the color palette is concerned, it's honestly probably one of the less intentional elements of what I do. A lot of the things that I sort of do to build a work is sort of process driven, and I take, like a reference image and sort of distill it down to an abstract form. And when I get to the point where I'm gonna put paint onto the canvas, it's more of an intuitive sort of approach when it comes to the colors. And I've been kind of trying to develop a process where I have elements that I'm controlling pretty rigorously, and then others that I leave a lot of sort of leeway in. I guess, specific colors are just kind of coming on the spot to me when I'm doing the work. I think that the materials that I use are kind of more intentional. I've spent a lot of time sort of exploring different types of paint, different sheens, sort of how thick or thin I want to apply the paint. That's kind of the things that I'm thinking about when I'm creating the works.
What's your favorite type of medium that you've come across?
The most used sort of medium as of late has been stuff to sort of make the paint more of a matte finish. I've used matte medium a lot as of recent. The type of paint that I've been using a lot of as of late as well as Flashe, which is like a super matte finish, opaque sort of type of paint.
Is that the brand of the paint?
Yeah, Flashe.
Cool, I've never heard of it, so
Flash.
Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to cell vinyl. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's what like animators use back in the day when they were making animations. It's just like matte finish. Not a whole lot of transparency, but sort of the nature of the process of the way that I kind of layer the different parts of the painting. I do get sort of darker colors bleeding into the either more mid-tone or lighter tones that are over the top. That sort of is another one of those things where it's like part of it that I'm not necessarily controlling. And I'm kind of like, we'll do it, and then I'll step back and then I'll be like, I mean, that's kind of cool. Like I wouldn't have probably chose to do that, but the fact that I just sort of went through the process of doing it, it sort of worked out that way.
And that detail is apparent in this painting here, having the blue kind of come through with the red.
Yeah, and then it, you know, kind of creates another, you know, series of shapes inside of it.
Yeah,
So the decision was sort of intentionally made. I mean, with this piece, I projected each layer, so it was pretty precise as far as like the design of it. But when I designed it in Photoshop, I didn't have that sort of transparency element. That's kind of like the difference between, you know, like the design and the finished product kind of thing. Like that's super important.
got it. Did you have any source material for this specific piece?
This one's a similar source material. I've used a photograph that I took at the Walt Disney Museum of the original. They have that diorama of Disneyland,
Yeah,
and I took like an aerial shot of that, and it really wasn't to with the intention of making it into a painting or anything. And I don't really know why I sort of ended up using that as reference material, but when I went in and started separating the colors in Photoshop, it turned into something where I was like, I like how that looks. So
and that's just
in it.
that is your process. You really take something and you really kind of extract elements, and like you said, you distill it, and let other elements shine and let things kind of flow away. So yeah,
Until it's, you know, unrecognizable and becomes something else.
exactly. Yep. So my next question pertains to this piece. Do you have any commentary on why you chose to depict a scratch your lotto ticket?
That kind of is in line with the store closing
Mhm.
one that I did as well. All of the work that I've been sort of doing in the last couple years has been the abstract stuff that I've been extracting from reference material, and it almost has like kind of a pattern feel to it, or like camouflage, and isn't recognizable as anything in particular. I kind of wanted to balance that out. I was thinking like sort of having a show and hanging all the abstract works together, maybe it'd be a little bit too one note. And I don't feel like I'm there yet with these, but they're kind of like an experimental thing where I'm trying to integrate typography to help balance my body of work overall, and maybe communicate different ideas and try to develop like a more like assertive message or dialogue.
Mhm. So we'll get to the other piece that he talked about. It's called Going Out of Business. That it's also part of the show. It's later into the presentation that you'll see his typography. But here we have one of two and two of two, which is our main show imagery. And it's a diptych, but you know they are for sale individually as well. And this, for me, this looks like there's like a pathway, or it has some like environmental influences or aerial of a landscape.
Mhm.
Is there? Do you have any material for this piece at all?
And like with a lot of the stuff that I've been doing, like the recent sketches and everything, this one's based on the earlier sort of painting that we saw of the aerial shot of the diorama. So this is kind of a cropped version of that.
Okay.
I just kind of rearranged the same shapes and changed the colors, and everything sort of changes when you kind of crop in and um, do it's the same sort of reference material, but the composition is completely different. Once I took that picture of the diorama, which was back in like 2016, I've been kind of on those same shapes since then, and kind of playing around and also making paintings using all existing paintings as reference and trying to sort of build that continuity.
You're building your own language essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really kind of, before that, I mean, I was doing a lot of different things. And then for whatever reason, I kind of landed on it and have been going with it ever since. So
I can definitely relate. And I definitely have developed my own abstract language in my paintings, whether they be like watercolor or oil. And so I totally understand you could kind of go from a lot of different things, but you finally find what works and what you feel comfortable depicting and putting time into, because it takes time.
yeah,
And so, yeah. And do you consider time and like giving a painting some rest as part of your process?
definitely. And that's sort of like what it is when I'm referencing like a painting that I did 2 years ago and kind of making a new sketch off of it and then making a new painting out of that. It really is something kind of fresh and new, but still in the same vein and still not necessarily, searching for new ideas. It's just kind of developing on what's already the foundation that I sort of put down. And that kind of comes from like artists that I admire and have been following on Instagram and online for years. And the sort of elements that I saw from them where I'm like, why can I tell that they did that painting when, like when I'm just scrolling and I'm like, oh, I know that that's like a Misaki Kawi or like a Trudy Benson or, it's that signature sort of identity that people develop over time. And that's something that I wanted in my work. And that's why I kind of intentionally like tried to, and I'm still, going down that same road.
And now you have a different pathway with this piece. Everything must go.
Yeah. And to sort of answer one of the sort of prompt questions about it, it's like, I guess it's a pretty loaded painting and it's sort of kind of just referencing the time that it was sort of painted, during the pandemic and kind of a lot of stores closing down. And this is sort of like, it's just a painting of one of those generic signs that you buy to post in your window when you're going out of business and sort of selling off all your product. I've been developing a body of work and a lot of it has been around the idea of being like, in a sort of capitalist economy and Americana, and the American dream and that kind of thing. And that's where like the sort of money element of the lotto ticket thing is kind of working in a way. I feel like it's maybe a little bit too obvious as far as like, referencing money or whatnot, but that's, like I said, it's kind of an experimental thing. And I've gotten mixed reviews about it. And a lot of people seem to like the lotto ticket one. It's like kind of more of a conversational piece as compared to like the abstract stuff. And it's been a lot of fun sort of just talking about it and not necessarily making it like this sort of heavy or conceptual artistic thing. It's like just a more sort of relatable human sort of painting.
It's also like a double entendre with the American dream and California dreaming, and you kind of play with that factor of like American dream. You come to America because financial stability, and here you have California dreaming on a lotto ticket where the chances are very low that you'll be getting the big money. Mm-hmm. So I like that play that you were kind of work that into.
Yeah, no, I think that part of making the painting too is the whole idea of like the whole like pipe dream of hitting it big and like what would I do if I got $25,000 a month for 25 years, or would I be more happy? That kind of thing. Like all I need is that, and then I'll have my life figured out, kind of thing. And I don't know, it's like a very fun sort of like visual painting, but it's like kind of loaded at the same time on the back end. Like it's like a fun thing, but then there's all kinds of like elements of like greed and money in general, that kind of thing.
So here is Memo, which I love, very warm. Do you hand stretch your canvases?
Yeah, I do. I started doing that years ago now, and it's sort of become a pretty big part of what I do. because, you know, just kind of the fact that this painting in particular, I mean, it's two colors and then the background is just the canvas, the raw canvas. And it's like, I've been kind of trying to be pretty controlled and like throttled back and trying to simplify the abstract works a little bit. Going through the process of like building the canvas and everything, it seems like it's about 50% of the painting. Once I did it a few times, it's like, it's important for me to do. I think the initial motivation to stretch my own canvases was like, oh, it's cheaper to do it like this. So like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm gonna buy the canvas and the stretchers and then do it. And then once I did it a couple times, I'm like, just the plain like the canvas, once it's done and stretched, and then you put a clear coat on it, it's nice and taut. I'm like, that is a work of art in itself, you know? So
Agreed 100%. It's you put time and if you put enough intention into just building something as simple as a surface, it feels like you own the piece 100%.
yeah, and it's like, you know, that craft sort of element to it. And I think that it sort of gives me a little bit more appreciation for like the super minimal artworks that I do see. Like if you're just doing literally like a solid color painting, but you built it, that's kind of like the phantom art of it.
Definitely. So this is our last slide here, and I do have one last question. You kind of touched it here and there, but how influential is print, television, and other visual media to your practice?
Pretty influential, and it's one of those things where it's like I don't really take like a whole lot of like notes or try to develop like concepts around being influenced by television and media and advertising, but I'm definitely like, I feel like with the art, I'm kind of, whether I like it or not, a product of my environment. So it's sort of resonates into the work regardless, and it kind of finds its way in there. And I think that with the store closing piece and the lotto ticket one, it's more of me kind of like embracing it and kind of accepting it. And I look at those pieces as contrast to the abstract works. And I think that eventually maybe they'll sort of come together and make sense as, you know, like a unified sort of language, but definitely something that I want to explore further.
Well, your use of like bold colors that are super saturated, they definitely play with print media and, you know, kind of commercial-esque visuals in the nicest way possible. And
Oh yeah, I appreciate that.
yeah, so I think I could definitely see a show of, you know, a larger show happening with a conversation happening between your abstract work and further developed works that involved a lottery ticket or signs of businesses going out, similar to what we have here. So I can't wait for you to develop that even further and kind of push the boundaries on what painting is, like why do we pick certain things.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, using the types of paints that I use and the color orientation, it's like it's intuitive to an extent, but yeah, you know, like I guess at the end of the day, it's to sort of get like a high contrast on most of my pieces and kind of like get your attention a little bit with it or something like that, you know, like, and that's where me being influenced by advertising and television, that kind of thing, sort of finds its way into the work. You know, I was thinking about advertising and all of that sort of influencing the work. And it's like, if you sort of take a TV and kind of put it on, like if you just look at commercials, like how kind of like fast they are and schizophrenic, and then you get like these blurring sort of like imagery. If you just blur your eyes during like a commercial break, it's maybe a little bit similar to one of my paintings.
All right, I love that. Let's do some experiments. Yeah.
And also I have to do a plug for a show that I'm going to be a part of tomorrow night at Ingleside Gallery out in Ingleside off Ocean Avenue at 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock, December 17th tomorrow. So
All All right, people, you better be there. Eagleside Gallery. It's 1507 Ocean Avenue. And Shrey Purehead is the manager of that space. And yeah, they've been rocking out some amazing art shows there. So happy that you are involved.
Definitely.
Okay, so I think we have someone that wants to ask a question. Is that Nathan ready to go to ask a question?
Yeah, and I think I'm first off also really glad that you're doing this, Chad, for speaking about your work. I'm really enjoying this, and also ArtSpan for facilitating this. So a highlight of my evening. And I wanted to say that like I was able to talk with Chad at Ingleside, and when Shrey curated the landscape show, so able to see his work in person there. And one, I want to re-emphasize that like I love just like how you make like abstraction interesting, which I think is like a really like powerful like skill set, in the sense that they're they can like in some of the pieces they can kind of reference something you think but they kind of feign away from that. So it's just I just think I love that quality of your work, and I also love the craft, just the consistency and just like the finish is really great. And I wanted to add on that I liked the lotto ticket one more so than the everything must go sign, partially because I think there's like I don't know, maybe that you chose the lottery ticket because there's something like attractive in the design of it, or something that's a little bit more like complex than the store closing one. But I'm very curious about directions where those things might merge, because I find your abstractions like very subtle and enticing, and I find the ones where you're making images, like painting images of those already existing things as like a dialogue with a different part of art history. And I'm very curious about where those things might merge if you choose to, while also kind of cheering on keeping up that like I don't know, the creative abstracting component.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for the words, Nathan, and I hope to see you tomorrow. I don't know if I'll be able to make it, but it's definitely like some food for thought. I would definitely agree that the California Dreamin' one is nice too, just because it's more like an optimistic sort of painting too. Like the store closing one is pretty blatantly like kind of a bummer, really. But I still see, like we were talking about, they sort of have the contrasting sort of like you're either winning or you're losing kind of thing.
Yeah. And I appreciate you're just so open about what is impacting you and your like decision to make work about it. I feel like you're very intuitive about that, and then you're able to make something very polished out of it, which is I think a great skill. And I guess like part of me thinks like keep going with that with like the lottery ticket thing, but like I think you can, I don't know, it's almost like how do you categorize and merge what is inspiring and impacting you? And I don't think I'm making a great question out of it, but when you took the aerial landscape photo, you said in your abstraction there was that one layer there. If you were to take a part of the lottery ticket and to add your own perspective on it, is there a certain part of that lottery ticket painting that you would take and like you could see yourself playing with or abstracting more?
I mean, just immediately, like right now, I like the background sun rays, like rainbow kind of stuff behind the typography. I think that doing the lotto ticket was like, it was a play on sort of scale too, because these things are so small when you're scratching them. And I was like, if I make a 2 foot by 2 foot lotto ticket, it's going to kind of like be kind of trippy looking.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But also I think that the longer sort of goal is to be able to do just typographic paintings, because I really like people who do that, like Barbara Kruger and Ed Breska and that kind of thing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I just really like typography in general, and it just hasn't been something that's found its way into my painting practice. But I do have a soft spot for the abstract work, so I'm gonna definitely sort of keep going with that. That's kind of like when I'm developing the designs for the abstract works, it feels really like almost like meditative or therapeutic kind of. It's like a guilty pleasure kind of thing. And then doing the typography works is more like traditional sort of design approach, communication, kind of visual communication thing. So
Thank you for explaining your perspective on that. I appreciate your response to my question. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Do we have any questions in the chat?
We have a few, but I'm wondering if anyone else would like to state theirs. Otherwise, I can read them.
Well, I had a bunch, and so Vanessa, if you want to read any that were from other people, and I could read some of mine, or I don't have to read all of them.
Well, since you're already speaking, why don't you pick your I don't know, your favorite one?
My favorite 10. Okay. Hey, Chad, thank you. This is great. I always enjoy getting to hear people's process, and it's super interesting. I like the abstract and the not. So like this one that's up right now, like there was also, and the everything must go. It reminded me kind of, not like totally, but a little bit of that kind of like, oh, we can all relate, like a Campbell soup. And so I was wondering if Andy Warhol has inspired you in this sense. And then I had questions about some more of the abstracts, but I'll wait till you answer.
Yeah, definitely. Like when I went to the Warhol exhibition when they had the MoMA and saw the Campbell soup sort of prints all lined up, and I've seen the original exhibition that he did with those two. And I mean, I know that Warhol's, people could say it's played out or whatever, but it's undeniable about the sort of influence that he's had on art, and the whole it really is like hitting home with like America and art with what he did, and sort of like to be part of the whole like economic system that we live in, the sort of crazy rat race that we're part of. And so yeah, definitely Warhol is definitely an influence, but I just am a little bit hesitant to be like, yeah, Warhol's my main influence or whatever, and like I mentioned earlier, Barbara Kruger's a big influence. I really like her stuff, like super good, super awesome, like kind of taking just words and making it art. So
Cool, thank you. And it's poignant. I mean, the topic, and hearing you talk about it and questioning capitalist dominance and all that, and even I was reading into it, but like 13 chances to win, I was like, oh, 13, like unlucky 13. But and I don't even play the lottery, but it was like, oh my gosh, I'm drawn to this art piece. Yeah, interestingly. So, and to question all of it, that's great. And then let's go back to the abstract. Just my general question is, do you have images in mind that you put in? Is it random? Do you have some ideas? Like on another one, I saw some animals, like kind of horses, dogs, birds. That could be what I see in the world, but I'm curious if there is some intention there, and if so, like what has inspired that in your art?
I think with the abstract stuff, I definitely am just try to keep it all about shape and composition and color and scale and the materials that I'm using. It's really like I don't have, like, I've tried making sort of like doing them and then putting like eyes on them and making them into little cute kind of character kind of things, because there's artists that I know that do that kind of thing well. It's never really translated into something. and I'm completely comfortable with just leaving them sort of ambiguous. So to sort of answer that question, it's like definitely there's no real intentional imagery to come out of it. And the stuff that I've been doing as of late, like the early versions of these abstract paintings were projected and then filled in kind of like paint by numbers. But the more recent paintings that I've done have just been like, I'll make a sketch and then I'll just scale it up by hand. And then there's a lot of sort of leeway between the design and the finished product nowadays.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
There was a question in the chat about stretching canvases. Someone had asked if you had tried stretching a round frame or a triangular frame, a bit like embroidery, and what that impact would have on your work.
I have considered it, and I follow a couple people who do really good like shaped canvases on Instagram. And really, like I've made a couple stickers, like just sticker designs recently that have kind of rounded corners. And I think it would be really cool to experiment with, especially with the abstract ones, obviously, to like kind of use the shape of the canvas as like a part of the, you know, dialogue or whatever I'm trying to communicate. I haven't tried it yet, but that's something that I would like to explore.
Awesome, thank you. And then we had another question that was wondering if you had done any mural work or if you had considered doing murals at all with your work.
I have not done any murals with like my personal artwork. I've done murals in the past though, and I would like to do some murals of this subject matter because it would translate pretty well. And I got into art doing graffiti, so I'm able to sort of do it. So it would be cool. It'd be fun. And you could probably do one of these paintings pretty quickly with spray paint.
Do you see yourself painting like something super big if you had the chance to?
Yeah, I would 100%. I've done some pretty big, like I did some work with 1 AM and a buddy of mine a few years ago at LinkedIn, and those are some pretty big walls in their office. And I enjoy working large scale. It's been one of those things where like in my studio space and when I was painting in my apartment, it's like one of those things where it's a necessity as far as the scale of the work. Like I really wanted the work big, but just given space, it's like I scaled everything down and started to think about it on a smaller scale. But yeah, like longer term, I would really like to see what all these shapes look like when they're blown up on the huge scale.
Awesome.
Thank you. I have a question. I'm curious, for me, abstracts, I know, or I think I know. I feel like it's so there's so much focus on color, your negative space, forms. And I'm always curious to know if you struggle with a particular color, if there's colors that you avoid, or if there's like any particular color combinations that are, I don't know, like challenging or especially uncomfortable for you.
It's a good question. I don't know in particular. I guess like more recently, as far as the colors and stuff, I've been kind of trying to stay away from black and white. I have made a couple paintings where, you know, I'm putting black or white into the painting. I feel like those are kind of the most challenging colors for me to integrate into a painting. I think that it would like work well in some, but I've been trying to sort of, as of recent, it's been like I've been trying to get all my colors to harmonize a little bit better, and kind of using one color out of a can and then mixing it down with white and then using that as like a, you know, tonal sort of variance. And then outside of that, I mean, I guess just kind of a technical part of, I would mention that, you know, using yellow, if anyone's used yellow paint, it's like going over stuff with yellow paint is pretty challenging and doesn't really work often. So I guess that's just kind of a note about colors and my approach.
Yeah, I don't know why I anticipated you saying yellow, so. But thank you for answering my question. And we have another question that just came through in the chat. Anak asked if you have you ever tried doing sumi or Chinese painting on canvas?
I'm not sure if I'm familiar with sumi. That's just like ink, right?
Japanese ink.
Yeah.
Japanese ink, yeah.
I've used inks to sort of develop designs for paintings. Like that's kind of, I'll use graphite and I'll use watercolors and I'll use inks to sort of make like loose sketches to develop shapes. I haven't used it on canvas, but it seems like it'd probably be a pretty cool idea to try. Because I guess another step that I could sort of take or experiment with is to sort of lay down a background that's maybe a little bit looser and then go over the top with kind of more tight shapes that I've been using. So that's a good suggestion.
Well, hopefully we see some of that maybe influence your future work. I don't know. Any other questions coming through or?
Oh, Jason, I think, is itching to ask something.
Well, it's one, I did put it in the chat, and it's one that I've asked in other events with ArtSpan members, artist members, and I already know the answer for them, but I'm curious if, back to color, Chad, like during pandemic times, has your use of color blossomed? Has it changed? How or just in general, how has pandemic shaped your art? And that's a very broad answer.
I would say that pre-pandemic, my palette was like more primaries, like at least, and I don't know if it has to do with the pandemic or just like me running out of painting one type of paint and wanting to try something else. But I've kind of moved away from the sort of primaries and kind of gotten closer together, or maybe gone into like one, I'll choose sort of like one section to do a painting in, like cool colors or warm colors, that kind of thing. But the pandemic, I mean, definitely influenced my painting, and that's like super obvious with the store closing one. That was kind of like that was kind of my pandemic painting. So
And you have a painting behind you that it's in a similar family.
this one,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Compared to some of the paintings here where they have a little more contrast, that one has like a similar familial.
yeah, and that was pre-pandemic. So yeah, and primaries right there.
Yeah, exactly.
And then yeah, this one too. This is all like, it's all cool colors. So kind of just trying to, because I think that pre-pandemic, just given the nature of where I was at in my process, I was like trying to make every painting like have every color. And then, as time sort of went on, I'm like, I think the whole goal is to have these paintings hanging next to each other. So like, I think my approach was like earlier on was like every painting was like an end goal, and now I'm making paintings to sort of fit in more with the last one that I did, and I'm thinking about it more of like, this is just one in thousands that I'm gonna do.
Mhm.
So
For sure.
I don't need it. I don't need every painting to satisfy every sort of, desire or want or anything like that. They can be very individual.
Mhm. Well, great. Thank you everyone for your questions. And Chad, thank you for answering my questions and giving such wonderful answers, explaining your process and your inspiration. You can see the artwork on our virtual art and neighborhoods gallery or on our online store to purchase the artworks as well. And you should definitely see the art in person. It is up until February 2nd, 2022 at Cumaica Coffee in the Excelsior District. Get some fresh coffee, get your caffeine fix, and look at some beautiful art by Chad. And this is the conclusion of the presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and you can put yourself on gallery view and say hello to everyone. So put your screen on. Hello, thank you for coming by and thanks for joining us tonight on our virtual reception.
Yeah,
Thank,
that was fun.
thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you, Chad.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your questions and comments.
Welcome.
So on behalf of ArtSpan, I'd like to give a cheers to Chad for his work and for participating and for this beautiful reception. So cheers to you, Chad. Congrats.
Cheers.